entire interior of Brazil is basically growing food in a petri dish, and you have to add every scrap of nutrient. As long as the fertilizer is available, this is a rounding error, but that's not the world we're in. And there's a lot of countries in a similar situation. Anything in pink or blue, 40% or less of the land is under cultivation. And this is pre-industrial Africa in 1950. Here's where they were in 50 years later, because after 50 years of access to industrial inputs, they were able to increase their output by a factor of 5. We now get to do that in reverse. Give you an idea of scale. Here are the 3 nutrients: nitrogen, phosphate, and potash. The big numbers on the left are the percentage that are imported. And you'll notice for the first 2, we really don't import much at all. We do import most of our potash, but that's mostly from Canada, so you know they are good for something. These are the only blocks that come from the conflict zone, from any conflict zone. That's manageable. Here's Brazil and Australia. The world's 2nd largest agricultural exporter is completely dependent upon international trade and no conflict. Oh, it gets worse because here's the stuff that comes from China, and here's the stuff that comes from the Persian Gulf. Isn't it wild that we all think of the Persian Gulf as like calm right now? It's like nothing's changed, it's just our attention is somewhere else. But yeah, that's gonna blow up in time. I hate this graphic so much. This is all of the world's agricultural caloric profiles. Anyone in deep blue or deep green is one of the world's major producers and exporters. Everyone else is a net importer. And if you break down the ability of fertilizer to get to where it needs to go, these are the countries looking at least a 40% reduction in their ability to grow the crop in the first place. Starting sometime next year, we are going to have food shortages that are multi-continental. And they are probably going to expand to the point that we're going to lose 1 billion people over the next decade. The supply chain system just takes too long to adapt. In this sort of environment, we are going to have a conversation in this country about things like the renewable fuel standard. Because if we have the ability to save a few 100 million people by growing more food for product as opposed to food for fuel, that's a discussion we need to have. We're not there yet, but expect this to be a really big issue, not next year, because next year is when the food shortages start, but the year after. All right, where do you guys fit in? 2 things to keep in mind. Number 1, Iowa is the only agricultural state in the United States where most of the income is from value added. You don't just grow the crop, you process it for either distribution within the United States or for export. I would argue there's not a lot that you can do to grow more, at least in relative to everyone else, because every inch of Iowa that can be under crop is. But you can always move up the value-added chain when it comes to exports. For example, we export a lot of soy to China where they crush it and turn it into oil. There's absolutely no reason in the world we're devolving into that you shouldn't do more and more and more and more of that value-added here. And unique among the American states, you've already gone a long way down that road. So it's just extending what you know. Second, the competition. Brazil, China, and Ukraine have the 3 most similar climates and product sets to Iowa. Well, Brazil's going away. China's going away. And Ukraine, even if they win the war, it will take them years, if not decades, to rebuild their physical infrastructure. In the worlds of corn and soy, holy crap, you are suddenly the only players aside from like Nebraska and Illinois. And you want to talk about an unfair fight, that's that. If you do nothing, everything that you have in place is going to make this one of the fastest economically growing regions of the world for the next 30 years. If you do nothing. If you successfully move up the value-added scale, you're talking some seriously outsized success. There are 2 problems. The first one's cultural. You all remember Field Dreams, right? If you build it, they will come. That is an awful investment portfolio. But this is how you guys think of it. You're like, if we educate our people, if we have the farm, if we're professional, if we're polite, if we're forward-looking, that it's just going to come to us. That's not how it works. You have to go out there and get it. Now, some of the Southerners have a reputation for grabbing everyone who has a say in a potential investment project, getting their body weight in hard liquor, and like going to Berlin and Paris and Seoul and wining and dining and drinking them into stupors and forcing them to sign contracts, then going home and they get the foreign investment that comes with it. That is an option. The Texans are just like, okay, there will be no taxes, ever. And we're going to come to your state when you're having a financial crisis to remind your business community of that. That's another model. But the bottom line is you have to have some serious outreach. You probably need to do something crazy like hire a Nebraskan, because for some reason that I can't fathom, Nebraskans are fond of their state and they love to talk about it. You guys are just too damn polite. You need to get out of your skin a little bit. And then the second problem is going to be labor. This is an atypical demographic. It's almost a perfect chimney. But check out the bottom three tiers, the 10 to 15-year-olds and under. This is some version of this is happening almost everywhere in the United States. The Zoomer generation is small. You guys need more labor. There's no way around that. And the obvious vector for that are things like ISU. But because the pool is shrinking, because you know exactly how much it will shrink for the next 20 years already, you can't do what you've been doing. You're going to have to do some serious recruiting because there's just not enough local to fill all the spots. Now, sure, you could lower your standards. Some universities do that. That's a problem. Sure, you could try to raid, I don't know, the Cornhuskers or the Hawkeyes, but isn't that the same as lowering your standards? But remember that we're entering a world of economic dislocation. And there are going to be a lot of very smart people and a lot of parents that have money to move that are going to be looking for a place to land where there's rule of law and economic opportunity. I realize immigration has become a four-letter word in the United States, and that's not going to change in the next few years. But the college program is a way around that, at least in the midterm. And I would say that you guys need to push that as hard as you possibly can. All right, final slide. Inflation. Here's the CPI in the United States and Canada, similar economic structures. You would expect the data to track. It does. Since 1945, we had three big phases of inflation. First, we had that initial industrialization and urbanization push. We built our cities, we built our suburbs, we built the interstate system, we ran power into the countryside. That is industrial demand-driven inflation. Then the baby boomers came of age. They bought their cars, they built their homes, they went to college, they raised their kids. Consumer demand-driven inflation. And we've recently been living through this weird-ass period. The Chinese entered the global economic system, providing 1 billion workers, pushing down the cost of manufactured goods. And the Soviet system broke, dumping an empire of raw materials on global markets, keeping commodity prices under control. Both of these things lasted for 30 years. Well, folks, all the disinflationary trends are turning inflationary, and all of the inflationary trends are back. The Chinese labor is literally dying out. The Russian stuff is going away. The baby boomers may be retiring, but their kids, the millennials, a large generation, are at the peak of their consuming years, and they have another 10 years to run with that. And because of the fall of Germany and China, we need to roughly double the size of the industrial plant in the United States, assuming we still want stuff. Americans love stuff. We're looking at 9 to 15% inflation annually for at least the next 5 years. Now, before you have a stroke, consider what this means from the other side. If we pull this off, 5 years from now, we'll have supply chains that are cleaner, use less water and energy, employ North Americans, are closer to home, have fewer steps, are more secure, and service ourselves, and are largely immune to international shocks, and this inflation will go away. it'll be the greatest economic story in the history of Canada, Mexico, and the United States. Or we could not do it, and we could still have the inflation because of product shortages, and those won't end in 5 years. 9 to 15 will be our new normal. Now, as an American, I have a preference between these two options. But I am not the decision maker here. That would be you. So no pressure. Okay. Whew. If you're looking for more, here are the books. The QR code at the left will send you to the newsletter sign up. It is free. It is always free. It will always be free, and I will never share your data with anyone. However, if you do like what you read, I do suggest that you kick a little bit money to the QR code on the right, which is MedShare. It's a charity that I'm backing right now. All proceeds from all books are going to MedShare for at least the rest of the year. MedShare provides medical assistance to communities who, for reasons beyond their own control, have lost the ability to do it themselves. So think Russians blowing up power systems on purpose and the chaos that that causes in the health system. That QR code goes specifically to the Ukraine page. Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you for getting the share joke. That was brilliant. And I'm sorry I went so far over.
Wait a minute. Okay. Well, Peter, thank you for your presentation. I've seen you on a number of occasions, and you didn't disappoint me today. I've got a little gift for you here. Nobody goes away empty-handed.
Is that the peanut butter pie?
Oh, it could be, but it might have melted.